Good morning, Brian Mahoney, Roger Weiland, Zach By in Albany. How are you?
Hey, Roger. How are you?
Good, Brian. Trying to sort through the meeting yesterday. What information do you have between Phil Jackson and Carmelo Anthony? We're hearing varying reports about whether it was contentious, heated, or just a nice little casual conversation.
Yeah, I think the word contentious, one report said it was more contentious than before, which I guess doesn't necessarily mean it was contentious. Just, I'm sure Carmelo was a little mad about the last few days, I think. A couple things have come out, whether they came directly from Phil or whether they seem like Phil's thoughts. A few things in the media this year have been said about Carmelo that I think have bothered him. And, rightfully so, Carmelo was upset, wanted to meet with Phil, and, he's told us, he's told fans, he's told everybody he wants to be in New York, and that's what he told Phil as well.
Yeah, and what was written by Charlie Rosen, and I couldn't agree more with Melo. If Melo thinks that what Rosen wrote might be the thoughts of Phil Jackson, he might not be wrong on that.
Yeah, it's what we all believe, honestly. Yeah, I know Charlie Rosen came out and said otherwise the other day, so they were his thoughts alone, but it's hard to believe that if you're someone who's worked as closely with Phil as he has through the years and has a relationship with him, that it's not some way what he's thinking. I would have had the same feeling, honestly, that Carmelo did.
Brian, here's the question. If Melo wants to win a championship, right, it's not happening in New York. Why doesn't he let this New York Knicks team try to figure out a trade to get him to a team where he could actually win a championship? And no chance of doing that in New York, as far as I can tell. What is it about Melo who just will not leave New York?
I think it's a couple things. I think, one, he really, really likes being in New York. I think his family likes it. I think he likes it. And, the money, he's making a great salary. And I think he's different than some other guys. I don't think he needs to win an NBA championship in his mind to feel like he's had a good life and a good career. Carmelo's won 3 Olympic gold medals. He's won an NCAA championship. He's won plenty. He hasn't won in the NBA, but he's won in the rest of his basketball career plenty. He's going to be a top 25 scorer, maybe top 20 in NBA history by the time it's all said and done. He'll be a Hall of Famer. So if he leaves without a championship, he's going to be okay. And a lot of guys can't say that. He seems to be one who can, and that's why I think it makes it easier for him to say, you know what, I don't want to just go to some city maybe I don't like. I want to be someplace I like, and New York was where that is.
Brian, I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question, really ask you to project and look into the future. Suppose that scenario that Roger just laid out, that it comes true, that Carmelo Anthony never wins an NBA championship in New York. How do you think that Knicks fans will ultimately remember Carmelo Anthony?
Well, obviously they're going to say, he's not going to be held as high as some other players. He didn't win, but I look at it differently, and I think fans need to a little bit too. Those who are critical of Carmelo, this has been a horrible era of Knicks basketball. They've barely even made the playoffs in this whole century since 2000, 2001. And the fact of the matter is they've won it 3 times with Carmelo. He's actually won a playoff series here, which almost no other players can say in this era. So the bottom line is you can't compare. If you want to compare him to certain other guys in Knicks history, he doesn't hold up. But if you compare him to what his era has been, he holds up just fine, and I think that has to be looked at a little more closely.
Time with Brian Mahoney, Associated Press, beat writer for the Associated Press covering the Knicks. Brian, can this team turn it around? I mean, it seemed to be an awful mess right now. I've lost 11 of 13. I think Knicks fans thought they'd be a lot better with, some of the off-season acquisitions. I personally think Phil Jackson has done a terrible job here, really bad. I know he's won 11 NBA titles as a head coach, and I respect him for that. But this team is a mess right now from the top down to Jeff Hornacek. I mean, are there any answers to turning this thing around? Because they're having a bad year.
I still think it's possible, Roger. Obviously, I think the big key is Porzingis' health. He's been out with this Achilles injury. If he's able to come back and stay back, then I think there's a chance. If this turns out it's a long-term thing, which is a concern when you're talking about that kind of injury with that kind of size, then I think there's no chance. They have to have all hands on deck to make this possible, and it's not going to happen without him. And the other problem they have is everyone else in the East has kind of gotten hot. Teams that were struggling early, Washington, who they play tomorrow, Indiana, those teams who maybe early on were beatable and now have kind of come on. So the Knicks are going to have to win a lot of games to do it, and they're not showing it now, but it's not. I won't rule it out quite yet. Let's put it that way.
Has Jeff Hornacek, in your opinion, done a good job?
I think he's done okay. Not great. Obviously, the defense has not been good, but he's coaching a team of guys put together for the first time who it takes time to win with a group that has not played together. And he could do a little bit better, but I don't think he's been their biggest problem. Let's put it that way.
Brian Mahoney, Associated Press, beat writer, New York Knicks. Thanks for a few minutes here on Big Board Sports this morning. We'll talk to you down the road.
Thanks, guys. Take care.